Mhm. Um, Hello, everybody. Sorry about the late start. We always pride ourselves on being on time, but trying to deal through some technical challenges today. I hope everyone is well. I'm broadcasting live from Cape Town, Azania, uh, known mostly by its colonial name, South Africa. I'm here and glad to be here. It's 2 a.m. in the morning here. It's 10 hours ahead of Pacific time, which is, of course, the time I live. But I'm just happy to be here and glad that we can continue to bring you a very important program today on Venezuela. Sorry, just trying to still get set up here. So just give me a second. But we will get started in just a moment. Uh, it's it's good to be here. It's very interesting. Um, this part of Africa, it's the first time I've been to this country, and it's a lot different than everywhere else I've been in Africa, which are many different places. This is still a settler colony here. By settler colony, we mean that the colonizers are still physically here, just like they are in occupied Palestine, like they are in the United Snakes of America, like they are in Australia. They're still here. So being here in Cape Town, it feels a lot like being in the U.S. But you're definitely in Africa. The spirit of our people shines through. I've been able to talk to a number of people here already, having only been here a few hours, and just looking forward to the coming days. I think tomorrow we're going to visit Robben Island, which, if you don't know, is the prison here. It's like 7 miles from where I am now, about 13 kilometers. Everybody in the world uses metric except the United Snakes of America. So it's 13 kilometers, which is about 7.5 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And Robben Island is the prison that incarcerated Robert Sobukwe, the founder of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, one of our sibling parties, of course, and Nelson Mandela. For the 27 years he was in prison as a leader for the African National Congress, ANC. ANC is still, of course, in power in this country. Cyril Ramaphosa is the president of Azania, or what they call South Africa. He is a leading member of the ANC, the African National Congress. A lot of contradictions with that, and we'll definitely do a show when I come back highlighting those contradictions. But for now, we'll get started. We give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. It's really something. This is the second time I've been able to do this program from home. In 2023, I think the night before the so-called Christmas holiday, I was able to do it from Ghana. It was midnight there when I did that, and now tonight, and it's just a special form of spiritual strength. Being at home, I just feel the ancestors so much more, and that makes sense because at home here in Africa, this is where they are. This is where most of them are. Most of them are not in the United Snakes of America. Most of them are here at home. So you're going to feel them stronger. And I do. And just honored to be able to in the midst of that, recognize the indigenous people and their struggle over in the Western Hemisphere. And of course, as I just mentioned, our African ancestors are here, you all. Whether you believe it or not is immaterial. They are here. And they are here. I feel it. I feel their spirit. I feel their energy. I feel their communication telling me to continue on, to continue to wage this fight. So we're glad that you're able to join us for this very important topic, the truth about Venezuela. Just honored to talk about that here. And we will just do our brief introductions. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party based in Africa. Our objective is Pan-Africanism. It's defined as one unified socialist Africa. Our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Nkrumah's handbook, displayed on the next page. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Jamu, and my biological and ideological daughter, Dr. Shakura Umi. And I just realized, Shakura, we had said you would start the program this week, so I messed that up. So what do you want to do
Oh,
to
you're
move?
you're good. We can just keep it going. You can introduce me. I'll do the next two and then I'll give it back to you. All
Okay,
good.
all right,
I
cool. So,
appreciate you. Yeah.
yeah, so as you all know, Shakura just returned from her own trip. And so, I'm sure she'll tell you some about that. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to her so we can get started.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Baba Jamu. Greetings, everyone. I'm so happy to be back. I have missed you all. I have missed you so much. We have so much to talk about. So much. I definitely feel you, Baba Jamu, when you mention just feeling the sensation of the ancestors. When our plane touched down in Havana, I literally started crying and I couldn't stop crying. And I guess I just felt the literal liberation, that, but also just knowing that my ancestors had so much to do with me benefiting from landing on that solidary free land. And it just was so humbling and it was moving and just emotionally jarring in a sense, in a good way. So I definitely feel you on that. I'm so happy that you made it home safely. And I'm so thankful that the ancestors can continue to motivate us to do this work. And I hope that for all of you, however you can connect to your ancestors, I hope that they motivate you to continue doing this work because we know that it is most important. I also want to say that this particular topic is really personal to me because, as you can imagine, the timing of everything happening with the president being abducted was literally overlapping with my trip in Cuba. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. But I just wanted to start us off by helping us to understand that this is a consistent cycle, you all. This is not a new thing. Okay, so when we think about calling everyone a dictator, whether they disagree with the US capitalism worldview, excuse me, without a definition of what a dictator is. And that's the premise of a lot of how the US frames everything, right? So, we know that they called Fidel Castro a dictator, right? Which is really fascinating to me because as soon as you get to Cuba, whether it's Havana or Matanzas or wherever you are, you see nothing but Fidel paraphernalia. You see nothing but it. I mean, you see Che Guevara stuff too. But my point is, the people of Cuba are proud of Fidel. That's my point. They are proud of Fidel. You see statues of him everywhere. There are landmarks, there are posters, there are billboards, there are paintings on walls. This is why I was moved to tears, you all. This is why, because if you're not careful, you'll let the US imperialist empire tell you all these things about this person and how they were such a horrible person, when in actuality, you failed trying to kill them multiple times because you couldn't kill them. And to quote Huey P. Newton, even if they did succeed in killing Fidel, they can't succeed in killing the people or the revolution, right? Because the revolution doesn't stop with one person, okay? That's what we're trying to let the oppressor know. So I just want to say, like, when we even talk about this idea of a dictator, let's be clear that the US has never, ever made that definition very clear. And the bottom line is just like there were several examples of memorializing and celebrating and amplifying and promoting Fidel Castro, there were several examples of promoting and amplifying Ernesto Che Guevara all around Havana, all around Matanzas as we were driving through the different cities. I also mentioned to Baba Ajamu that there was a statue dedicated to Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in Havana. And so I'm just trying to share this with you all so you can understand this and frame this in a different kind of way, okay? Because I can't tell you where there's a statue dedicated to Fidel, Dr. King, Ernesto Che Guevara, or Malcolm X in San Jose, in Sacramento. I wouldn't even be able to tell you. They literally took the place where King was assassinated and turned it into a profitable museum at the expense of him losing his life. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual statue where we can honor the work that he did while he was on this planet. And the fact that I have to fly into another country to give honor and glory to Malcolm X and to King should tell you something, because it definitely told me something. Okay. I hope you're listening. This is also to understand that there's no criteria. It's just the slur. And it's not even that. It's just a label within that. Okay. We should even think about, it's like if you were to train a dog. This dog is trained and responds to things like when you say good girl, they understand that that means they're going to get a treat. They're probably sitting down and paying very close attention to understand how that treat is going to come into their mouth very soon. A dog doesn't know what the phrase means. They are just programmed to react based on the association of a certain way of how they hear it. It might be our tone, it might be the smell that we elicit when we say it to them, and they know that we smell a certain way, and that means a treat is coming, whatever that may look like. And so they hear it to get what they want because they're trying to do what they think we want so that they can get rewarded with that treat, right? And so naturally, we see the photos on the slide. You see the image of the beagle sitting down for the treat. You also see Colin Kaepernick kneeling at the bottom. And then we even have the image in the upper left of people holding the US imperial flag, saying, Make America Great Again, Donald Trump. The so-called U.S. flag code states you are disrespecting their flag if it is displayed in any altered format. Yet the people create flag versions like this in the picture, like the dog or program, so that they can disrespect the flag while altering it. While criticizing someone like Colin Kaepernick, saying he's the one disrespecting it, which is a complete contradiction, like a trained dog. So, just in case this slide is not making sense to you and we want to bring it to you full circle, you have to understand that if you are resisting this imperialist US Eurocentric occupy Palestine Israel empire by any means necessary. Again, Malcolm X resisted, Martin Luther King resisted, Fidel Castro resisted, Ernesto Che Guevara resisted. If you are resisting it, Carlotta resisted, then you are in a position where you are not to be celebrated, but you are in fact a part of the problem. That's why people are going to say that you are the issue. They're going to say you're disrespecting it. They're going to say you're not being patriotic. And they're going to cast you and say all these names, and propaganda is going to beat on that and continue with that, making other people think that you are in fact the problem. We say this every week, you all. This is why political education matters. Next slide, please. Because if you are not careful, then you will let other people convince you for so many years of a lie to the point where you will start to believe it yourself. And I promise you, if my plane had not touched down and I had not seen all those folks wearing their Fidel hats and wearing their Fidel shirts, wearing their Fidel, bags that they have, if they had not continued to wear that paraphernalia day in and day out, I would not have believed it myself. So you have to understand me when I say, from my words to your ears, this means that we have been seriously fed some lies. And if that's not true, what else has not been true that we have been convinced to believe otherwise? That's the question, right? Speaking of lies, to cover up the immorality, right? The US President Trump pardons Honduran ex president of confirmed and documented drug trafficking charges in which Hernandez was serving a sentence for. Major drug charges for this so called siege against the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has zero to do with the concern about any drug trafficking. I repeat, has zero to do with a concern about drug trafficking. They are not related, you all. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the CIA, has used drug trafficking as a fundraiser tool for decades. Everyone, or has everyone, forgotten about South Los Angeles with the flooding of the crack cocaine in the 1980s and 1990s to illegally fund the Contras in overthrowing the democratically elected government of Nicaragua? Let us not forget about that. And then also the convicted drug dealer and former Honduran president Hernandez on the left here of the photo being released from prison in December of 2025 after Trump's pardon, right? So thinking more about this and being able to make these connections. I told you that I would connect it back to Cuba before I turn it back over to Baba Jamu. So Maduro was abducted the morning that we were scheduled to go to a museum. And we had to readjust our plans very quickly because we understood from the moment we got off the plane that we were there to support the Cuban people. That's literally the name of our license, right? So we were there to support the Cuban people, and that meant by any means necessary. And so what happened was we understood that because of the abduction earlier that day, there was a protest that was being organized very quickly in the town square of Havana. And we stopped the plans that we had and got to work making protest signs. We got to work getting our flags and literally like took barks off of trees and used that to hold the flags up. I mean, the kind of intentionality, the kind of innovation, the kind of creativity that was used and that I witnessed between myself and other comrades, you all, it brings me to tears thinking about it even today. It brings me to tears even thinking about it today because that is what African people do. That is what Cuban people do. We take nothing and we make something out of it and we do what we got to do. Okay, that is what we do. So just to be able to see that was profound. And so we were able to travel to the area. It was right outside the US Embassy where the protest took place. And you'll never believe this. The president of Cuba was there chanting with us because we understand that an attack on Venezuela is a direct attack next to Cuba. Cuba is next. And they're going to try to do what they did with Venezuela. They're going to try to do it with Cuba. We all spoke about that and we understood that. And we knew that we had every responsibility to protect and to support the people of Cuba because without them, we have nothing. They have been so resilient this whole time. We must protect it. Even if you never get a chance to go to Cuba, you have a responsibility to research and to educate yourself on it. And if you don't tune into these broadcasts every week, that means that you have somewhat of an understanding of what socialism is. That also means that you understand that you and the empire have a responsibility to protect the entities that are trying to uphold and to maintain that. They are trying to promote humanity, you all. Without them, without Palestine, without Africa, without Ireland, without any of these places, parts of Asia that are being oppressed, we as humans have nothing. It's not so much about protecting the land anymore. It's about protecting and preserving humanity, you all. This is what you need to understand. These are vicious monsters that will stop at nothing, harming, bombing, killing people. Will stop at nothing to do that. And if I die today, you need to remember that we all have a responsibility to protect everyone on this planet, especially the people that we don't know. And if you know of a place where humanity exists, if you know of a place where people are prioritized over the amount of money they have, you better bet your dollar that I'm going to expect you to protect it because the sacrifices that Cuba has made have greatly impacted you, whether you know it or not. They have greatly impacted you. For all you know, you have a doctor that studied medicine over there. For all you know, you have a doctor that went to a professional development training by a doctor who studied medicine there. For all you know, this doctor was influenced by a doctor who studied medicine. I could go on and on. So we're not going to sit here and play this game and say that Cuba hasn't done anything for every single one of us that's on this broadcast right now. That would be a waste of space, energy, and time, to which we don't have. So we need to think about this. We need to educate ourselves and we need to move forward, you all. The time is now. Venezuela needs us. Haiti needs us. Cuba needs us. Humanity needs us. If you haven't picked a side yet, you better make a decision quickly because the oppressor has already decided for you. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada, Isantisana, Medasi. And since I'm in Azania, Nkosi, which is Zulu for thank you. So I want to say again, in case you joined us late, I'm broadcasting from Cape Town, Azania, or what people call by the colonial name South Africa. And it is 21 in the AM here. And I just mentioned that because, Shakur just returned from this obviously very emotional trip to Cuba, in the midst of this imperialist kidnapping of the Venezuelan president, and just the struggles that the Cuban people have been enduring for decades now, just for standing up and wanting to build a socialist system just 90 miles from the United Snakes of America. And so she's just been back a few days, and obviously I just got here today, and it's 21 hours of travel time, and very little sleep. I'm just making the point of how important it is for the two of us, in particular, and the party as a whole, to make sure that we get correct education out to folks about what's going on in this world. That's very important to us. That right now is the critical thing that we do, that we have to do with the work that we do. And so I'm hoping that you can take that and spread it, let people know what's going on, let people know about these programs, and continue to help us build. Um, it's interesting, again, just some of the elements here, in this society. If you don't know the quick history, and again, we'll do a program on it, but the quick history is, the country was colonized by the British, and to a lesser extent, the Germans, Dutch, and some other people. And this country is one of the most resource rich regions on the entire planet Earth. There's a large supply of diamond wealth here, gold wealth, the world's largest reserves for zinc, which is the metal, the only entity on the planet Earth that can bend steel. That's here. There's uranium here. There's every type of natural earth mineral that you can imagine here, and all of the major corporations are here. Most people have talked about in the last year how people like Elon Musk are from here, and his wealth was built by his daddy being a criminal thug who exploited the emerald industry. That's another rare earth mineral that's here in plentiful supply. So this is a settler colony, which means that the Europeans who colonized it are still here. Their descendants are still here. The richest man in this country is a European, Nicky Oppenheimer, who is the current heir to the De Beers diamond wealth. We mentioned the exploitation of the diamond trade, the way in which that trade ensures that diamonds can be transported to the Zionist state of Israel and polished to prop up that backward government there. This is the reality here. And, there's a tension that exists because of that, because this is, again, a settler colony, but unlike uh, the other settler colonies, the Europeans are plentiful here, but they're not the majority. And that tension is everywhere, if you have the experience and the consciousness to understand it. So, we'll be talking a lot. Like I said, we'll be doing reports. Shakur will be doing one on Cuba. I'm sure, Shakur, we'll do one program here where you can talk about what you experienced there, and certainly we'll do one on my work and time here in Azania, South Africa. But let's talk about the truth serum about Venezuela, because that's very important. Venezuela, just like all of South America, Africa, uh, etc., there were dictators in all of those places, but the people that they're calling dictators now, like Nicolas Maduro, that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about the actual dictators that existed in Venezuela and in other countries before the Bolivarian Revolution in 1999. And if you don't know who Simon Bolivar is, I mean, you should do some study and find out, because all of the principles of the Venezuelan Revolution are based on principles practiced by Simon Bolivar, and that's important because someone was questioning me the other day, and I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to waste my time with you." And they were like, "Well, how come you can't talk about it?" I'm like, "No," I said, "No, I can talk about it." I said, "But would would Mariah Carey, if you walked up to her and said, I could sing better than you, Would she waste time having a singing competition with you? Why would she need to do that? Would Barry Bonds, if you walked up to him and said, I can hit a baseball better than you, would he say, well, let's go to the batting cage and prove it right? Why would he need to do that? He's already proven he's the best hitter, or at least one of the best, irrefutably in the history of baseball. So why would he need to do? Why would LeBron James, if I can beat you one-on-one, LeBron, why would he do that? Why would Messi, I can play soccer better than you? Why would they do? They have no reason to prove anything to you. You're the one trying to prove something. So that's why I responded like that. I don't have to say anything to you. I said, you don't even know who Simon Bouvier is. If I put a gun to your head, you couldn't point to Venezuela on a map. You can't tell me one policy Venezuela has instituted since their 1999 revolution. You can't tell me one impact of U.S. economic sanctions against Venezuela that the people have suffered since 2017, since those sanctions have been imposed. You can't tell me anything other than these dog treat talking points that you've gotten from watching, getting your PhD from Fox News, and that's why I don't need to waste my time with you. You're a miserable loser. That's what I said. That's my term right now for all these European men. You're a miserable loser. That's what you are. And you know you're a miserable loser because that's why you're so upset with us. Because you've had a 500-year start where we couldn't do anything. We were prohibited from doing anything, and you were permitted to do everything. You've had 500 years to get your shit together, and you're still today lower than I am. And that's why you're pissed. But you can do something about that. That's up to you. That's your decision. So we're not going to appeal to we don't give a damn how you feel. We're going to talk about the truth. And so we want to talk about how Carlos Andres Perez was the president in Venezuela before 1998. And Hugo Chavez led a coup d'etat that overturned the Perez government in 1998-99. Perez was president of the country for a total of 9 years. They weren't consecutive. He had one term in the 70s and 80s. Then he was ousted in an initial military coup d'etat. And then he came to power again through influential economic interests in Venezuela. And then he became president in the 90s again before he was disposed of by Hugo Chavez in the Bolivarian Revolution. He was impeached in 1993 under a massive embezzlement scheme within Venezuela's national economy. The man was stealing money from the national treasury because that's what these kind of people do. That is a dictator. That's what dictators do. They steal all the money in the country. They viciously exploit and oppress the people when they want to stand up against that. And they do that to serve the bidding of international imperialism. Those are the three requirements of a dictator: brutally exploiting and oppressing the people, stealing all of the country's resources, and doing it to serve the interests of international imperialism. You remember that. Those are the definitions of a dictator. And Nicolas Maduro meets none of that criteria. Even his enemies today, you haven't heard one peep about he's got all these Swiss bank accounts, he's stealing the country's money and the reserves, because he's not doing that. The only people that you see talking about oppression and exploitation in Venezuela are these Europeans in Florida who have left Venezuela. These privileged Europeans, like this Machado woman, who is supposedly the chief opposition leader in Venezuela, who's lived all her life here in the U.S., a Yale University graduate. These are, the revolutions are fought for the people on the bottom of the society. And because of that, the rich people, the elite people, are never going to support revolutions. I don't care where they happen. They're never going to support that. These crackers here in this country, here in Azania, South Africa, they are never going to support. I saw a post today from Elon Musk talking about how this country used to have prosperity under racist apartheid. That's what he didn't say that, but that's what he meant. And how it's been turned to rubble since Africans have been in government positions. These people are never going to accept that their rise to power has always been on the backs of the suffering masses. They're never going to accept that. And so you got to know that, because you're sitting there listening to these Europeans from Venezuela. You're not listening to the masses of people within Venezuela who have benefited from the Bolivarian Revolution. You don't even know how to have access to them. And so that's why we hope to inspire you to want to do that. Because since the revolution in 1999, Venezuela has dropped that country's infant mortality rate from 20 deaths out of 1,000 to 10 out of 1,000. That is they have essentially dropped in half the infant mortality rate. When Perez's regime and the previous regimes were in power, they did nothing to address infant mortality. The Bolivarian Revolution has done a major accomplishment by reducing infant mortality in half. Because you can talk about whatever you want to talk about what a country is doing or not doing. But if you can't even live out of the infant stage, you can't experience anything, good or bad. So the first thing that has to happen if a country wants to have any potential for moving forward is you have to make sure that the people are healthy and that they can live, that they can function. So this is why it's absurd to call socialist countries that are led by dictators, because the first thing that happens in genuine socialist countries like Cuba, genuine socialist countries like Venezuela, is they make education and healthcare free so that everybody has access to it. Now, I don't know about some of you folks out there, but I'm not a damn fool. And I know that if I wanted to control a society, the last two things I would do is make sure people were educated and healthy. The first thing I want to do is make sure people were sick and were having to focus on maintaining their lives through sick and that they are ignorant, like people in the US. That's the first thing I would do if I wanted to dominate a country. The last thing I would do is make education and healthcare free. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's the reason why in Venezuela, healthcare is free and it has been free and it's universal in the country. You know, imperialism will tell you that there's a healthcare crisis in Venezuela today. And certainly they have done, even capitalist economists, rather, if you study it, have acknowledged that the U.S. sanctions have done more than anything else. Now, certainly there have been errors that are made by the Venezuelan leadership under the Chavez administration, under the Maduro administration. It's a new country. The revolution is not even 26 years old. You 26 years old, 36, 46, 56, 66, 106, and you still make more errors than you do things right. So clearly we know it takes time to understand how to figure out this thing called life. And the Venezuelan people have every right to build their revolution and to do so in a way that allows them to make errors, figure out that those are errors, correct them. This is how socialist development happens, you all. And it is completely criminal to prevent them from doing that, and then at the same time impose crippling sanctions that make it almost impossible for them to do that. And then to stand back while that's happening and look at them and say, well, look, they're having trouble. Well, of course they are, but you remain part of the reason why they are. So yeah, there's crisis there, but all of those things can be worked out if the Venezuelan people can be left alone to build their socialist revolution. Look at these clowns in the U.S. Oh, we're running the country. We're going to, Venezuela's already put in Delcy Rodriguez as the vice president into the president position. They're moving forward with their revolution. They haven't submitted anything to the U.S. And if you believe any part of that, then that you're just being propagandized by the enemy. You got to dig deeper. And I see all this stuff on social media, people talking about how, it was so easy for them to capture Maduro. It must have been a plot. Look, you're focusing on the wrong thing. We need to focus on the Venezuelan people. We need to focus on the people, the masses of people, not any individual leader. That's not what this is about. It is about the people of Venezuela. So there's crises, but these crises result primarily, again, from these economic sanctions, which are preventing Venezuela from doing business with countries that produce much needed medicines. So, of course, you're going to have a crisis in healthcare. But this reality doesn't change the fact that there is still a doctor, one doctor for every 1,000 people since the revolution. So people can go see a doctor. They have the opportunity to do that in Venezuela, just like they do in Cuba. And Shakur can attest to how healthy people are in Cuba. You see people, it's a poor country, but everybody's healthy. They have their dental hygiene is great. Their dental hygiene is better than people in the US who can't even afford to see a dentist, or even if they can, don't go because they don't trust it. Whatever the case may be, their healthcare and their dental hygiene is better than that. One doctor for every 1,000 people. And so, yes, it's about oil, but it's also about much more as to why the U.S. is attacking Venezuela. And, again, as I've said many times, I study economics. I pay attention to what's happening in the world. I understand what's happening in the equity markets. And so, because of these things, I know how to interpret world events. I know how to listen to that great philosopher, Chris Tucker, the actor from the first Rush Hour or second Rush Hour movie, where he tells Jackie Chan, if you want to know where the problem is, follow the white man with the money. That is a profound statement that if you follow it and listen to it, you will understand a lot more than you do right now about what's going on in the world. And I remember I said the rich white man with the money, not just any old random white man. You ain't gonna learn nothing following no random white man that's a miserable loser and mad at you because he hasn't been able to capitalize on what white supremacy has given him. I'm not talking about those people who are misled. I'm talking about the Elon Musks of the world, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Kellogg's, the JP Morgans, those people. You follow them, you'll understand clearly what's happening in the world. And so that's why the same day that Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Sister Flores, were kidnapped by so-called Delta Force soldiers from the criminal U.S. military, JP Morgan Chase, speaking of them, they made an announcement. And these are things that are not going to be on the news. So if you don't do the research yourself, you'll never know about this kind of stuff. I dig and find out this type of information. But anyway, they made an announcement the day of that they were going to provide the seed money, or I'm sorry, um, JP Morgan Chase, that bank that was started based on seed money that was acquired from them investing in the enslavement of our ancestors. They announced last Saturday, the day of the kidnapping of Maduro and his wife, that they were underwriting the development of an $8 billion smelter plant in Caracas, Venezuela. An $8 billion smelter plant. Now, what does that mean? So, again, what's happening with imperialism today, you all, is there is a mad dash for the natural resources. Natural resources make the world go round. If you don't have natural resources, you can't feed your people. And if you can't feed your people, they're not going to support you. So you got to have access to resources. If you look at China, the most populous country in the world today, moving towards 2 billion people. There are only about 8 billion people on the entire planet Earth, and 2 billion of them almost live in China. They have a crisis of being able to feed their people. This is why they're here in Africa. You can see buildings here. I'm looking out the window here and I see buildings that they have helped to construct. And the purpose for that is they construct buildings and infrastructure, build roads, and do all these things here in Africa in exchange for resources, natural resources that they can sell on the open market and or convert to resources they can use to serve their 1.7 billion people. So their relationship to Africa is different to then imperial relationship with Africa, where they just steal the resources and they leave nothing. They don't leave any infrastructure. There's no infrastructure here in Africa from colonialism. They didn't even leave the people. They stole us and took us to the Western Hemisphere. They stole every goddamn thing and took it to the West. But that's not the relationship with China. So when you hear that and read that, you need to dig deeper on that. But the point is, imperialism has a mad dash for the resources. And so, yeah, there's oil in Venezuela, but there's also large uh, reserves of copper in zinc. And I just mentioned a little earlier how you use zinc. All of that is there. So this smelter plant will be designed to go in there because if they feel like if they can remove the revolutionary regime, there's no other multinational corporations in there because revolutions put a halt to that. So they would have unfettered access to this zinc and this copper, and they would be able to melt it down and sell it on the open market and have another profit center to go along with the oil they would control. This is their vision. It's not going to happen, but this is their vision that they have. This is what that clown idiot keeps talking about on TV. And even here in Cape Town, Azania, South Africa, all I've seen on TV since I've been here today has been the U.S. president. And, you know, I was talking to my wife and the two friends we were here with, the two comrades, and you know, we were talking, my wife, explaining to my wife that, because she's like, why do I have to, in her words, why do I have to look at that bastard over here? I came here to get away from him. And I was saying, no, actually, you'll probably see more of him here on TV than you do where we live because these folks are concerned. They don't have their heads in the sand like people in the US. They are concerned. This man is bombing all these countries. They're concerned about what will happen to here, what could potentially happen here. You know, all these resources here and the African National Congress and government, they're concerned about that. They want to have complete settler colonialism back. So that's why what he's talking about is so front and center and the threats and everything. This is what they want to do. This is their plan. So let's talk about some Venezuelan demographics since the revolution, because these are the things we never talk about. Venezuela's population is 31.25 million, or slightly less than the state of California, where I live, which is about 40 million. 65% of Venezuela's people are working class people, meaning they're people who have either skilled or unskilled labor jobs. They have limited education. We're not talking about college graduates, okay? Although obviously Venezuela is doing what they can to change that by making education free. But what that means is 20 million of the 31.25 million people are people the revolution was designed to benefit. Most of the people in the country. And of course, these are not the people that capitalist media is going to be interviewing and showing you. You're never going to see those people. Almost 10% of that population are African and indigenous people. The slave trade touched every part of the Western Hemisphere. So as a result, African people are in every part of the Western Hemisphere. And of course, the Western Hemisphere is indigenous lands. So they're indigenous people. And so those people were on the bottom of society. Obviously, the black and brown people, the black, brown, and red people are always on the bottom of the society. And those are the folks who the revolution was designed to benefit. You will not find any poor Africans in Cuba, any poor Africans in Venezuela, any working class Africans, any working class indigenous people in Venezuela and Cuba who are against the revolution. It's only the elite that are there. And that's why it's important to have the tools to differentiate between the two. And so on the picture on the screen, that's a picture of an African from Venezuela, Jesus Chuco Garcia. And Comrade Jesus has presented at All African People's Revolutionary Party organized African Liberation Day commemorations for at least 2 of the last 3 years, highlighting he works with an organization called the Afro-Venezuelan Network. And their work is designed to ensure that the revolution meets the needs of African people in Venezuela. So he works for the government, the Bolivarian Revolution, and he's a representative for Venezuela's African population. He's not an elected politician, elected with corporate dollars, like your so-called Congressional Black Caucus in the United States of America. He is a, a an activist who the government has a working relationship with to ensure that African people are effectively represented in government resources and programs in Venezuela. This is what the revolution is doing, you all. This is what the revolution does. This is what you have to understand. This is what they're not going to tell you. This is what you're not going to ever learn if you're listening to any of these crackpot ass capitalist resources that are talking to you about what's happening in Venezuela. The whole point of revolution is to lift the people on the bottom of the society up to the top. And Shakura would talk about this more when she does her report back on Cuba. But you have to understand that socialist societies are organized completely different than capitalist societies. Capitalist societies are built around bureaucratic institutionalization. They have entire industries in capitalist countries that exist solely to exploit the suffering of the people. And Fidel Castro talks about this extensively when he was alive and engaging in commentary about what was happening in the socialist revolution in Cuba. And one of the best articles I've ever wrote in my life was an article he wrote on bureaucracy. I read it back in the 80s when I was in my 20s, and I remember almost every word of it because he talked about how capitalist societies rely on bureaucracy. And what is bureaucracy? Bureaucracy are institutions that are designed and maintained to exploit the challenges that the people have in the society. So, what are examples of bureaucracy? Toll companies. Don't they exist to exploit your trauma? You park somewhere longer than they say you're supposed to, and they see, oh, I'm going to toll, make them pay for parking somewhere. Now, what kind of sense does that make? But it's so normalized in the capitalist countries, you think it's normal. It doesn't make any damn sense. You park somewhere and they steal your car and make you pay for it to get it back. That's a bureaucracy. It doesn't need to exist. It doesn't contribute anything to society. Collection agencies. So you have trouble paying your bills. 80% of bankruptcies in the United States of America are due to medical challenges. And so you had a medical challenge, and healthcare is so expensive in the most backward industrially developed country in the world that you can't pay for it. So now they have these people harassing the hell out of you to get you to pay. How does that make a contribution to society? That's a bureaucracy. Insurance is a bureaucracy. And in socialist societies, people are organized to address these problems on their own. They don't need these bureaucratic institutions. That's very difficult for people to believe whose only education comes from the capitalist system. But these are the types of things that the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution is putting in place. And they are the types of things that capitalism does not want to see in place. That's why they so viciously and consistently attack the socialist revolution in Cuba, the socialist revolution in Venezuela. And that's why you have to understand that so that you can be on the right side of history. So let's reject capitalist propaganda about Venezuela. And the way we do that is, the capitalist system has people in the richest country on earth who have no health care or just losing what little health care they have, no savings, no stability. And they think because they got this PhD from YouTube that they know everything about Venezuela and that they understand what's going on. These people have nothing in the US, in these capitalist countries. They have nothing at all. And they are commenting, they have all this to say about socialism, when really socialism is the only solution for those people. And the capitalist system is going to do, I mentioned several programs ago that the capitalist system is in such a great state of decline, even though you might not see it, because their whole aura now is convincing you that they're not in decline, but they are. They're in a great state of decline. And so all they have left is their ability to control the way people view them, to control the way people think about them. That's the most effective tool that they have left at their disposal, and they're using it. So this is how they've got people who don't have health care in the US, don't have any savings, no stability, don't even have a job, get them thinking, well, you don't want socialism. Whereas the first thing socialist societies do is make sure you have a job. Okay, make sure you have a place to live that no one can take from you. Make sure you have health care, right? Those are the first things a socialist country does when socialism is constructed. So, of course, if that's the case, how that the capitalist system is not going to want you to understand that about socialism. So they're going to do everything they can to propagandize you against it. And this is the reason why the people that need it the most in the US are the people that are most opposed to it, right? But again, let's talk about this definition of a dictator. someone who controls every aspect of the country to enrich corporate interests and themselves. Now, great examples of dictators are Mobutu Sese Seko in the Congo. And let's look at the three criteria that we mentioned. Did he steal all the country's resources? So when Mobutu came to power, he had an unprecedented number of Swiss bank accounts in Switzerland. People take their illicit money to Switzerland because they can go around the tax loopholes and the IRS problems and all of the problems of their money being detected if they're in other countries that don't have the IRS. The Swiss bank accounts are designed to do that. The same with the ones in the Cayman Islands. So people who gather money illegally and criminally, the real dictators, that's where they place their money because it's not connected to the world banking system. They can't garnish it, they can't seize the accounts, they can't do any of that if they open bank accounts in those countries. So that's why they do that. Mobutu had plenty of bank accounts in Switzerland. That's the first criteria, stealing the country's resources. Did he exploit and oppress the people? In the Congo, Mobutu ruthlessly exploited and oppressed the people. There were hundreds of thousands of people who were disappeared during Mobutu's reign from 1964 until 1997. The country was decimated. The election that they had in the Congo in 1960 to elect Patrice Lumumba as prime minister and to elect Lumumba's National Congolese Movement delegates to the National Assembly in the Congo, that election happened in the spring of 1960. Once Mobutu's instability in the Congo took hold and became dominant, the Congo didn't have its next election until 2007, 47 years later. 47 years later is when they had their next election. Schools did not run. Institutions did not function. Healthcare was a commodity. This is the blueprint for how you exploit and oppress people. That happened in the Congo. And the last criteria again, remember, you're doing it for who? International imperialism. That's who dictators dictate for. Did that happen in the Congo under Mobutu? Absolutely no question. It happened. The multinational corporations at that time in the 60s were in the Congo to exploit the uranium, the mass reserves of uranium, because uranium makes nuclear power. And the US at that time was engaged in a nuclear arms race against the Soviet Union. So they wanted to control the uranium so that they could do that. But the Congo, as you know, if you've paid any attention to what we're talking to you about, has so many more resources than that. The diamonds, the gold, the uranium, the bauxite, the zinc, all of those things. And so all of that is being victimized by this mad dash. And Mobutu, his job was to just open the gate and let these corporations in. He was the one that signed the contract that allowed Apple and Samsung and all of those multinational corporations to have unfettered access to the cobalt, which you use to charge your electronics devices, and the coltan, the columbite tantalite, which is used to facilitate digital technology, which allows me to be talking to you from clear across the world in Africa right now. That's what Mobutu did. So without question, he opened the door and let international imperialism into the Congo to exploit the people. The same for Marcos in the Philippines. The same for Francois Papadoc Duvalier in Haiti, and Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier in Haiti. The same thing for all of them. That's what dictators do. Pinochet in Chile, same blueprint, same criteria. You can see the same results. The same with Somoza in Nicaragua, same criteria, same results. But you will not see those results for Fidel Castro. You will not see them for Nicolas Maduro. You will not see them for Muammar Gaddafi. You will not see them for Sekou Touré. You will not see them for Thomas Sankara. You will not see them for Amilcar Cabral. You will not see them for Modibo Keita. You will not see them for Kwame Nkrumah. You will not see them for any of these folks who had no money. When the CIA overthrew Nkrumah's government in Ghana, he was penniless when he went to Guinea Conakry from the invitation of Sekou Touré. He had nothing. Sekou Touré had no riches. Muammar Gaddafi's son was thrown in prison. He just was released from prison. And I think it was Italy, if I can remember. He didn't have any money waiting for him. These people did not steal the country's wealth. They did not exploit and oppress anybody. Nobody was exploited and oppressed under their revolutions. That didn't happen. Fidel Castro had no money. He didn't take any money. His family's not rich in Cuba. They're still in Cuba today. They don't. The ones that are rich are the ones in Miami that never were in the Cuban Revolution. And that's why they're mad at the revolution, because they couldn't be uh, the type of leeches in Cuba that they are in Florida. So this is the important stuff you got to understand. These people, Maduro and Canal, the Cuban leaders, appear regularly among the people. They have no wealth stashed in these banks. The last thing a dictator wants to do is permit people to be educated and healthy. Said that already. These videos you see of people celebrating are elites from Venezuela. The revolution wasn't fought for them. Ivy League educated people, like that Machado woman. You are not seeing any of the working class African or indigenous people in these CNN, Fox interviews and all of this. And lastly, don't quietly let imperialism shape your vision. Don't talk about the U.S. taking over Venezuela. They're not taking over a damn thing. That country has a VP, Delcy Rodriguez. She's been sworn in as president. They're continuing their stated intention to have a Bolivarian revolution. This woman was tortured under the Perez regime, the regime that the Bolivarian revolution took over from. So watch and see what happens and study. Don't be a tool of imperialism. The people of the earth are moving forward. Please do everything you can to make sure you're moving right along with them. And we want to invite you for joining us. We will be back next week. I'll be broadcasting again at 2 a.m. here. The program next week will be the unknown Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to expose some little to not known at all elements of who Dr. King was and what he was involved in work-wise, things that you're never going to learn anywhere else. So join us January 18th. We want to ask you to scan the QR code in the top left, the red and white one. That one, you can get APRP programs like this. And then our self-defense class here in not here, but in Sacramento, California, in the United Snakes of America. We will not have class, obviously, the next 2 weeks because I'll be here in Africa, but we will resume classes there on January 29th. So hopefully folks can come Thursday, January 29th, and we will keep it going for 2026. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Go to AAPRP-intl.org to do that. Watch a training video and know that. The bottom right QR code, the black and white QR code, you want to do that so that you can become a monthly sponsor for our program in the Sahel to bring revolutionary literature to organize around in Burkina Faso and Niger. So help with that. And my book in the top right, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. There's a QR code to the left of that. Scan that and do one of a couple of things. If you haven't bought the book before, please buy it. It's a good organizing book. It's only $8 US. So please buy that. If you already have the book, tell other people to buy it. It's a great organizing book, and it serves a practical purpose to help our organizing work, which I'll explain in a second. And then the third thing you can do, I really hope that people can do this. It'll take you 5 minutes. Call your local library, ask them to order the book and buy it. Ask your local bookstore to order books, copies of the book, and put it in there so we can spread the word. Because again, it's a great organizing book, and also it's also 100% of the proceeds that come to it, I use for the anti-fascist work that I'm involved in. Like we, in our self-defense class, for example, we have a lot of equipment that we've been able to get over time that we use for training. We have people actively sparring now. And so I use the proceeds from this book to be able to help bring all of that into existence, among other things that are necessary for that work. We're going to do my plan My goal is to uptick our anti-fascist work in 2026. So the more people that buy books, the more capacity I can have to bring more people into this and to organize effectively. So please support all of this work. It's very good work. Tell people about this program. Tell people to get involved. You get involved yourself. Don't be a tool of imperialism. That's the easiest thing to do is give up. The easy thing to do is just be depressed and downtrodden and give up. Don't let them do that to you. Don't let them defeat you. Don't let them tell you that there's something wrong with you or that you need to you can't do anything. Don't listen to those people. They have never cared about you one day in your life. Why do you want to listen to them? Listen to your ancestors. They're trying to talk to you, but you're so clouded listening to the wrong voices that you can't hear them. You are a valuable person in this world. You are a valuable and important entity on this planet, and we need you. So get yourself up off that couch, get yourself up, even if you don't physically walk, get yourself up mentally and get to work. 2026 is going to be our year. The masses of people will not be defeated. Forward ever. Have a great rest of your evening or day, or morning, or whatever it is.